Yet another epic tournament has come and gone, and as this year has shown us time and time again, the results were simply unexpected, as usual. There were plenty of twists from week 1 of the qualifiers all the way up until the finals. With the results, though, also comes some valuable information. Here is one thing I learned about every team from the 2021 Summer Showdown Tournament. Let's start with the Eastern teams. The LA Valiant. A winless season is just around the corner. Is there really any hope left for this franchise to avoid the dreaded 0-16? They really don't seem to have it in them. The Valiant simply do not compare to anybody else in the East. Some people will say, well, they almost took a map off the Dragons. That's gotta count for something, right? Maybe you'd consider it to be some minor progress, but that's just about all you can say, right? Plus, almost doesn't really mean anything for the win count now, does it? This team has looked pretty alright on control maps all season, but it's not like they're winning them, or any maps for that matter. A -12 map differential means 4 straight sweeps during the Summer Showdown. They don't appear to have what it takes to push somebody further than a map 4 right now. They're just not built to be competitive. They need a miracle, or their fate is pretty much sealed. The Guangzhou Charge. You are one of the most consistent teams in the league. Without any context, that may seem like a compliment, but that could not be further from the truth. It's always a one-win stage for these guys. They'll have one good showing, then get killed in just about every other match. Their 3 wins come against New York twice and the Valiant. That's not exactly what you consider inspiring. These boys are trying their hardest, but this year has just been really tough. There's so many constant adjustments going on, especially with the coaching situation, which does you no good mid-season, and with mediocre play present at most positions, they just don't have it in them to win games or be consistently competitive for that matter. I would say the only real spot has kind of been Choi Se-wan and Krung to a certain extent, plus the occasional big performance out of Eileen, and that's just not enough to win you games consistently. Until they feel like a whole rather than pieces of a puzzle, this will continue to be the case. The Philadelphia Fusion. The mid-season struggles are real. It's incredible to see the Fusion dig themselves into an even bigger hole. Their good start to this year has been completely wasted. There was no way they'd be as dominant as last year in my eyes, but it's quite surprising to see them struggle this hard. It goes to show that talent isn't always everything. They've got plenty of that, but not a ton of results to show for it. They're in a big-time slump, and I'm not exactly sure how else to explain it. Maybe they're still not used to Funny Astro and EQO being incorporated into the rotation, or perhaps the meta has been a struggle as of late. Whatever it is, they're in a pretty tough spot. They're in grave danger of taking a massive plummet in the standings. With Hangzhou and Chengdu both sitting at 7 and 5 just like them, it's now or never. This team is lost and they need to figure out something right now or they can kiss their season goodbye. Every opportunity they get slips right through their fingers. It's a common theme that has been running with this franchise since day one of their existence practically. Every time they're in a winnable situation, it feels like they just find a way to blow it, like with the Chengdu game, for example. It's time to wake up. This team has Carpe, Alarm, Rascal, Funny Astro, Toby, and Mono on it. Does a group like that make you think of a bunch of losers? It's time to wake up and play up to your potential, Philly. If you end the season with yet another mediocre stage, you're done. The Hangzhou Spark. You're capable, but you lack stability. In the grand scheme of it, 2-2 isn't that bad for the stage. It assures you won't be losing any ground, but of course, it also means you're not gaining any. The Spark have shown they can pull some great feats off when everything's clicking. The problem is, things have very rarely clicked this year for them. When the team felt stable during the June Joust, they were pretty insane. It was their best stage by far, and the funny thing is, that was the one time it seemed like their coaching situation was in a pretty decent place. We all know the problems which occurred during the May Melee. Their coaching was a nightmare then, and now, here in July, a similar thing is played out. As we came to learn last week, interim head coach Andante's time with the team expired at the end of June apparently, and with their assistant coach Mentalist stepping away from the game, that also probably has left the team in a really tough spot this month. Now the Spark are turning to a new answer at coach for the 3rd time this season as they look for someone who resonates more with the team, I guess you could say. Every single stage so far has seen changes, and you cannot expect your players to unleash their potential under these conditions. It's not going to happen. Hopefully things calm down a bit during the Countdown Cup. I would hate to see a team with this much talent go to waste. The NYXL. You are somewhere between good and bad. This young team seems to be keeping up the trend from last stage. They showcase a very high ceiling in some cases, like when they beat Philly and took the Spark to a map 5, but then kind of just fizzle out with inconsistency issues still, as seen with yet another loss to the Guangzhou Charge. If only they had taken that win, you know? There's no proof they'd beat Chengdu in the knockouts or anything like that, but you'd have to like their chances a bit more than a showdown with the Dragons at the very least. That's my problem with this group. They're putting themselves in positions to do something noteworthy, but they usually can't finish the job. They aren't consistently a threat. But hey, on the bright side, Kalios looked pretty good in his debut. He's clearly making more of an impact than Bianca did, both with his comms and his in-game performances. Maybe he can provide this team with that extra push they need to make one more tournament before the season comes to a close. The Seoul Dynasty. You're in a good position long term. Not gonna lie, it is disappointing to see the Dynasty let yet another tournament opportunity slip away from them. To consistently go 3-1 in the qualifiers just to lose in the knockouts every single time is not the greatest look. It makes it seem like they can't win when it truly matters. They keep putting excellent performances from Profit and Fitz to waste. But you don't just have to take away the negatives if you support the Dynasty. When you think about it, all of these 3-1 performances have put the Dynasty in a wonderful position to make the playoffs without even having to go through the end-of-season play-ins to get there. Missed opportunities or not, 3 straight 3-1 qualifiers has given them a small foothold on second place in the Eastern Conference. Let's say they get 3 wins again in the Countdown Cup. That gives them 12 points on the year, which gives them a great chance at clinching the number 2 seed. Make no mistake though, the Dynasty are not home free. They are not totally safe by any means necessary. Thanks to Chengdu's performance in the Summer Showdown, they now have the same number of league points as Seoul. Luckily for the Dynasty, they do have the tiebreaker currently thanks to a superior regular season record. So they'd either have to play really badly in the last round of qualifiers, or Chengdu would have to pop off in yet another tournament. I know it doesn't really seem likely given their circumstances, but you never know what could happen with the Spark or Fusion as well, who certainly are still in this race given their 7-5 records. Seoul cannot ease off the gas here. They have a lead, but not a super comfortable one. Seoul losing when it matters the most could come back to bite them. But you also have to remember who we're talking about here. All it really takes is one tournament for these guys to flip that imaginary switch, if you will. We saw it multiple times in 2020, and with this roster primarily being the same still, I see no reason why that couldn't happen again, where they just go on a crazy run. But still, if you're Seoul, you really want to get that second seed just so you can save yourself a couple of heartaches, if you will, not having to go through the plans. That just makes your lives a lot easier, and your fans for that matter, because we all know they have gone through enough heart attacks in the past. The Chengdu Hunters. Your potential is immense. Man, did the Hunters prove me wrong this tournament. Every single time I doubted them, they strung together extremely impressive performances. Despite previous inconsistency issues throughout this year, they showed no such problems from the end of the qualifiers all the way up until the finals. I don't really have any complaints. Clutch victories over the Dynasty and Fusion plus 2 dominant wins over Dallas is incredible. Plus, with how hard they push Shanghai, this team might be on the up and coming. Clutch factor was something they were previously missing, but they've got it right now. Leaf is finally getting the credit he truly deserves as a superstar in this league and an MVP candidate thanks to some absurd hard carry performances on Tracer and Echo. And the rest of his supporting cast is something that you cannot joke about. In particular, I really wanted to give some credit to the support line. Those guys are a huge reason why Chengdu's run was even possible. The explosiveness of Monk has become apparent with his insanely aggressive style, and what about Yveltal? He's been reincorporated as a starter very nicely, and it seems that his hard work in contenders has truly paid off. If Chengdu don't lose their way, they could be a problem for just about any team in this league for the rest of the season. But that's the thing, right? I can't say for certain that they'll play this well consistently. With hero pulls coming into play very soon again, that might screw up their rhythm that they recently got themselves into. Let's say that Wrecking Ball were to get banned. I'm not saying he's going to, I don't know what's going to happen, but let's just say he does. What's the plan? Can the Hunters be as good without that focal point of their composition choice? They certainly have it in them to pull it off, but there's no way I can say with confidence they'll be perfectly fine. I do believe in the squad a lot, but less of those little extra advantages could be the difference between getting that 2 seed this year and having to fight for their lives in a play-in tournament of some sort. Here's Chengdu's opportunity to show the rest of the world what they're made of. Let's see if they can pull it off. The Shanghai Dragons. You are the best. No doubt about it. I think it's safe to say that the Shanghai Dragons are currently the team to beat. Now coming off back-to-back tournament championships, the Dragons have once again established league supremacy as they did back in 2020. The more they play, the more they look like that same dominant squad from last year. It took a few months to warm up, but they're back and I would say they're better than ever. They took the Sombra ball comp to a new level. They were clearly better than pretty much every team in the league on that comp. But a more important lesson can be taken away from their continued success, and that would be that Shanghai are the absolute best in the league at adapting. No matter the style or how good the team, Shanghai cruised through the qualifiers. Then come tournament time, they showed that the same tricks won't work on them twice. The Hunters pushed them to a map 5 in the winners finals, but then Shanghai made their second meeting just a day later, not extremely close from a score perspective. Now, it was a pretty close game despite what the score would suggest to you, but Shanghai did prevail at pretty much all of the pivotal moments. And it's not like this is anything new. A similar thing happened with their 2 meetings against Dallas in the June Joust. Now, of course, they had to mount a huge comeback to win the finals in that scenario, and they lost in the first round, but my point still stands. Once they've seen what you have to offer, they'll make the way better adjustments and have the clear-cut stronger game plan. You know the whole fool me once, fool me twice saying? That doesn't apply to Shanghai. They never get to the second part of that saying. Again, the Shanghai Dragons are the team to beat, and if we're being honest, they really could only get better as time goes on. Look out, world. The Dragons are once again on a rampage. That's all for the East, so now for the West. The Vancouver Titans. There's little hope left. As much as I want this team to avoid going winless, it feels less and less likely with every passing day. Not much meaningful progress has been made since the beginning of this year. They've gotten a little worse, if anything at all, because they have less map wins in the last 2 stages combined than they got in the May Melee. Whether it would be signs of regression, or other teams taking them a bit more seriously, or just leveling up more, it has left the Titans in shambles. As lovable as some of their players are, they just aren't cutting it. I don't know if they have it in them to win one of their next 4 games. I suppose they have a shot against London, but even they have been showing more meaningful progress. There's a good chance we will be looking at a 2-winless team season. It's such a shame to see how this once mighty franchise has fallen into irrelevance. The London Spitfire. A win is still within your reach. This season might be a lost cause for London, but that doesn't mean they have to lay down and finish 0-16. Sure, their map differential wasn't anything to brag about, but this team showed improvement. A new coaching direction and Sparker turning 18 could prove to be more meaningful against teams they have a better shot at defeating moving forward. Admittedly, their June Joust schedule was tough, but they did show some resilience in that first week of play against the Shock in Paris, and I think a little confidence boost could come from something like that. This season may be a wash, but they definitely still could avoid ultimate meme status. Do it for the fans, London. Get at least 1 win this year. You have yourself an opportunity against Vancouver. Now it's time to capitalize. The Florida Mayhem. You're in worse shape than we thought. Boy, oh boy, was I wrong about Florida after the June Joust, because I thought for sure they'd do at least a little bit better here in July. If only I knew what was going on behind the scenes, you know? The main tank situation right now is in shambles. In fact, it has basically entered meme territory with the establishment of Checkmate as the new starting main tank. Is this really how Florida's season is going to end? A roster with such promise that did so well this year, and at the beginning of this year for that matter, is now going way off the rails. This is no joke. As shown by teams of the past, the amount of talent on your roster means absolutely nothing when your tank situation is this messed up. I don't know for certain what's going on behind the scenes over in Florida, but this decision is looking to be a costly one. They are 10th place in the conference, ladies and gentlemen. That means they're only ahead of the Titans and Spitfire, aka 2 winless teams. That's it. Luckily for them, they're still only 1 point behind 3 of the teams ahead of them in the standings. It is not too late to turn it around by any means. It's nothing you'd consider insurmountable. But what if Checkmate is the guy the rest of the way forward? How is Florida going to adjust to a guy who's been playing main tank for like a month? And more importantly, how do they do it against Houston, Atlanta, the Gladiators, and Boston? This is a scary time to be a Mayhem supporter. The situation is dire. My prayers are with you guys. Good luck. The Toronto Defiant. You are incredibly average. I'm not trying to sound mean or anything here, but all my longtime supporters know I like to keep it real around here. What is the point in lying to ourselves? This Defiant team is borderline gatekeeper status. They usually win and lose the games you'd expect them to. And when you think about it, the Florida win this time around wasn't even that impressive considering the current state of the team. Does beating a struggling Mayhem team in the Vancouver Titans sound impressive to you? To this day, I still feel like their biggest accomplishment came back in Week 1. They truly do have a respectable roster. They really aren't even a bad team when you think about it. The truth of the matter is, this year's competition is fierce. I would say that 8 of their 11 potential opponents in the West on a week-to-week basis are tough matchups that could quite easily be a nail-biter or a game they lose. They're not good enough, plain and simple. There's still time to change before it's too late, though. They still have 4 more games to try and figure some things out, and they have plenty of firepower. In fact, it's arguable that they have more firepower than ever now thanks to the emergence of Aspire. This guy's produced some explosive performances as of late. It's unfortunate that they need more than that, though, if they want to win. Clearly, they are trying to figure some stuff out, but unfortunately, time is against them. The Houston Outlaws. You can't seem to finish the deal. I'm starting to feel bad for Outlaws fans. Every single stage up to this point has given off feelings of promise and optimism. They find a way to always really impress you early on and get you invested with an impressive win or two, and you're like, hey, look, the Outlaws beat a pretty good team. They're starting to show a good understanding of the meta. Maybe they have what it takes to finally book a trip to Hawaii. Then, once they have your attention, disaster always seems to strike. The Summer Showdown was no different. And it's not like you can make the excuse that they lost to Dallas in the knockouts. They didn't even qualify for the knockouts this time. This team always needs a week to figure things out, it would seem. When the meta changes, they feel sluggish. In this situation, they had a good read at it at first, but then Bunker slowly but surely became less reliable as time went on. Getting creamed by Dallas is understandable, yet again, because it did happen. But to lose how they did against Boston, yeah, that's pretty disappointing. No disrespect to the Uprising, but that's a game Houston should not be losing. Much like the Dynasty over in Asia, the Outlaws are squandering really good opportunities. Houston are in a perfectly fine position to qualify for the playoffs, but will it matter if they can't even seem to show up? The Outlaws have to show us more during the home stretch. They're more than capable of making a playoff and/or tournament run. Their potential is immense, but until they prove themselves, nobody will consider them a true title contender. The San Francisco Shock. You're in danger. The Shock are not in a great place. I've given them a lot of chances to prove me wrong these last couple of months, but they've failed time after time. This previous tournament was the icing on the cake, too. At this moment in time, they just don't have it anymore. They are not the same team that they once were. All of the players leaving for new teams or retiring over the years has finally caught up with them. Not to mention that the competition is definitely a lot better than it once was. There's no way you can truly write the Shock off completely until they're officially eliminated from playoff contention, but there's no way we can call them the favorites in their current state. It's not the same dominant Shock from years past. They're vulnerable. They don't always feel on the same page with one another. They're making mistakes that we're not used to seeing them make. It's quite literally been years since we've had to say this, but the Shock actually have cause for concern currently. Even if they have a bounce-back stage in the final month of the season, there's no guarantee they'll be in good enough shape come playoff time when you think about all of the losses that have accumulated against other top NA teams. I would argue they're not even top 3 in their own region, and I think most of you would agree with me right now because of these big-time inconsistency issues. The competition is most definitely caught up with them. The Shock better lock in, ladies and gentlemen. It's time to channel their inner god gaming abilities, or the three-peat will not happen. The LA Gladiators. You continue to show good improvements. Okay, I know they only went 2-2 in the qualifier, but wow, were they competitive the whole way through. Even in the losses, they usually came in map 5 fashion. Their execution just wasn't good enough in those big moments, unfortunately. But they're getting there clearly. They gave some good teams a serious run for their money. I mean, they were quite literally one team fight away from Hawaii. Their current system in place is working wonders. Their tank line has showcased a lot of growth since the May Melee, and they really have a nice rotation going on at support and DPS. Oh, and speaking of DPS, Kevster on normal ping seems to be making a difference as well. He's playing even better right now in my opinion than he had at any other point throughout this year, and I think the overall bond between him and his teammates has also gotten stronger. While I'm somewhat happy with the team's progress, they still definitely have work to do. They're still not winning some of those big games that truly matter, just like the Houston Outlaws. Not to mention that their mental seems to go on these crazy roller coaster rides. As Space put it in his interview with PlatChat recently, in the Paris game, they kind of just gave up. They felt like they were the better team but took no effort to finish the game off. They just wanted to get it over with. That's the kind of stuff that's going to keep you from winning a championship. They've got to get on that and ASAP. The Paris Eternal. I was wrong about you. Again. New year, same result, huh? I gave Paris no shot of being good once again, and I was kind of just too hung up on a roster that didn't feel all that appealing. It's the same mistake I made with the 2020 Eternal and the Valiant. Sometimes it's more than just a talent thing. I forget that a lot of the time. When you have a close group who comes together under really good coaching and management, they can squeeze out every ounce of potential they possess and pull off something special. When you have a smart and motivated group of guys both from the player and coaching perspective, they can pick up on things quickly, and as they do, their confidence begins to rise. Suddenly, teams that you were once afraid of don't look so scary anymore. Look what happened in the Gladiators game. They go down 2-0, but they never showed signs of faltering. And what about the Justice game? Yeah, they lost, and yeah, they probably would have lost to Dallas anyway if they had won the Justice game, but they still pushed a team with way higher expectations this year to the brink. Paris and their fans should feel incredibly proud of how far the squad has come in the last couple of months. From a joke who was getting memed on in the supposed bread bowl with the Vancouver Titans to a very respectable mid-tier team. Now that is what I call some serious progress. Even if they don't go all that far in the playoffs, this is a pretty good start to a potential rebuild, and it should have all Paris fans looking forward to something in the near future. The Washington Justice. Things are looking up for you. The Justice played up to their high ceiling during this tournament with some very impressive showings. After a brutal start against Atlanta where they got absolutely decimated, they showed quick improvements, which is a nice step up compared to previous stages. In fact, I would argue they got a lot better over time. Taking Dallas to a map 5 and nearly making it to Hawaii is evidence. Rookies Mag and Assassin look even more comfortable than ever, and if they can give Decay and Fury that constant backup they need, the Justice have what it takes to go very far, but they still aren't quite where they need to be. As the broadcast has brought up time and time again this year, Washington needs to be more aggressive. They play too reactionary. As we've seen in the past, that usually only gets you so far, like with the NYXL for example. Most of the teams winning and contending for titles are going fast. They go way faster than everybody else for that matter. They don't give you a chance to breathe. The Justice need to channel more of that. They show it at times, but not often enough. They have to be more decisive. A team of this caliber could be way more if they can just get over the hump. They are so close to jumping to that next level. All they need to do now is get that little extra push they're looking for, and they're going to show more impressive results for sure. The Boston Uprising. You're good, but still don't feel like a threat. I truly do want to believe in the boys in blue and yellow. I had high hopes for them coming into Season 4. But right now, there is an obvious pattern going on. They mostly just beat the teams they're supposed to, then pull off like one upset a stage to give you false hope. Then, knockouts come around and they kind of just get rolled. This team is still young. They're developing. As shown with their dominant victory over Houston, they're very capable. But when you're young, it's not easy to replicate that level of play on a game-to-game basis. Inexperience and fluctuating confidence play a big role in this kind of stuff. They remind me of like a young Shock towards the end of Season 1, or if you want like an IRL example, think of the Golden State Warriors before they became super relevant and were winning championships. The promise is there with the Boston Uprising. They just need more time to develop and build their roster, you know? I'm not expecting much from Boston the rest of the season, but that's totally okay. This is year 1 of a rebuild. Don't put too much stock into this season, Boston fans. Be happy your team is the best they've been in years. And think about the future. The wait will be worth it. I promise you. The Atlanta Reign. This team needs to be taken seriously. Man, oh man, this Atlanta team continues to surpass everyone's expectations. Aside from the Shanghai game, which nobody really thought they'd win anyway, they were insanely competitive this stage. To push the Fuel 5 maps not once, but twice is nothing to laugh at. And they yet again proved they're probably the second best team in North America currently, with quality wins against other really good teams around their level. The Reign are without a doubt a contender in my eyes. Not one of the favorites, but absolutely somebody you can't take lightly. I recognize that their performance against Shanghai in ball comps was not the best, but I can't really blame them all too much. Any team entering these tournaments doesn't have a ton of time to prepare, and they're playing against completely different styles which they have little to no practice against. Give them a bit more time to prepare, and they'll surely give these APAC teams more of a fight. They aren't the same team from previous years. They're better at adapting now. They're capable of being clutch. Their roster is more talented than ever before, arguably. Heck, even the coaching seems a bit better. Not getting a bonus win this time around really sucks, but if they continue to perform the way they have, then there's still time to move up a few places in the standings and maybe make it to Hawaii again during the Countdown Cup. The Dallas Fuel. you finally might have a weakness. It took about 3/4 of a season, but a way to counter the Fuel finally may have been found. And no, I'm not talking about a lack of hit scan. Really fast Wrecking Ball seems to be an issue. 3 of their last 4 tournament matches against APAC teams have shown this firsthand. It's not a style they're used to, nor is it one they're extremely comfortable playing themselves. The Fuel just aren't a Wrecking Ball team right now. They like Winston and Ryan, aka the Fearless Comfort Zone. They're really good at that kind of stuff. But these APAC ball comps are way different from what they're experienced with. Shanghai and Chengdu boomed them straight up, so heading into the playoffs, Dallas need to focus on this. The struggles have occurred in 2 straight tournaments now. They gotta find a way to adapt. They may not be able to solve this in the Countdown Cup, but I think they're more than capable of doing so heading into the playoffs. As I was just talking about with Atlanta, it's really hard to take down a style you're not accustomed to facing, which is designed to counter you. A couple days is not nearly enough time. They're all but guaranteed to get first place in the West. I think the Dallas Fuel need to just focus a bit less on Hawaii and more on how they can counter these ball comps so they don't come back to bite them later on in the playoffs. Take all the time you need to experiment and come up with solutions moving forward. This potential weakness is concerning, but the Fuel are an excellent team. They should be able to figure something out with enough time. Something like this, though, it's going to determine if they're capable of winning a championship. They've made the adjustments time after time, and now they have to do it again, or they might get left behind. Anyway, that's about everything I've got. That is one thing I learned about every team from the 2021 Summer Showdown Tournament. If you enjoyed it, dropping a like and subscribing with notifications on would mean so much to me. While you're at it, feel free to tell me some things you learned about the teams from this tournament down in the comments section. I'd love to hear your thoughts on everything. Thank you all so much for watching this video, by the way. I really appreciate your support. And until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.